Welcome to the ChangeMakers in CRE, a podcast by Re-Leased.
Hi everyone and welcome to the ChangeMakers in CRE. I'm your host Tom Wallace, CEO and founder of Re-Leased commercial property management software. And today we're joined by Michael Grant, co-founder and COO of Metrikus. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Cheers, Tom. Good to be here, mate.
Awesome. Hey, tell us a bit, just to get started, tell us a bit about Metrikus and I guess tell us a bit about your role as COO.
So Metrikus, depending on who you ask, we're software as a service or platform as a service in the prop tech smart building space. We've been around for just over 3 years. I did a management buyout of the company with the CEO, Gary Cottle, from the previous company that it was Asset Mapping. And since then, we've grown from 6 people to we're at 50 now. So growing rapidly. We've just hired 2 guys in the US, so they join literally next Monday. With our new president of the US there. So we've got 3 people in the US, a couple of people in India, 3 people in Spain, and then we've got our main team in the UK, and we've got developers in the UK and other parts of the world as well. So it's growing fast. There's, I think before lockdown, it was, you were pushing some of the stuff that smart building platforms like ours do onto customers, and now it's very much a full market. So we're growing rapidly. The team have grown rapidly, and we're, delivering software and services to businesses all over the world and projects all over the world, which is quite cool. Was it a well-timed pandemic for you then? If there was, not that you'd wish a pandemic on the world, but if there was going to be one, was the timing quite good? Every cloud has a silver lining. So I'd say the output or the good outcome from the pandemic is people have realized actually they do need to do something with their buildings. And workers, if I can call people that, I'm a worker, everyone's a worker, that you can work from anywhere now, but if you are going to go to the office to work, it needs to be better. And everyone's become an indoor air quality expert. So people either want to know what the indoor air quality is, or they even bring in their own sensors. IKEA sell this $10 thing that's not worth
does it work? Do you have to assemble it yourself as well?
Doesn't matter even if it works, right? It's red, amber, green. And if it's red and you can say to your business, this is red, but they can't prove to you otherwise, then you've got a problem. So yeah, more and more people are doing more and more things and a lot faster, because during the pandemic, no one really wanted to spend any money because they didn't know what post-pandemic was going to look like. But, London, New York, really busy, lots of different parts of Europe, slowly getting busier. I was at ISE and IoT World Congress Monday, Tuesday this week, and that was packed. But every cloud is a silver lining for us. We've never been busier. People coming back to the office. But typically, as every customer does, they want it yesterday now. They've had plenty of time to start doing it, but they want it yesterday. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah. No, we've noticed a similar thing where it's like, I think for a long time, commercial property was very slow on the uptake of technology, but to be fair, it kind of could be as well, right? There was like, you had long leases, you were sitting there on the asset, you'd fill it up, and it was like, life was pretty good and pretty easy, right? You didn't have to fight too much. There was obviously some wrinkles around retail and those sorts of things, but nothing like what the pandemic's thrown. And I guess I was reading the other day, I think it was an FT article saying that London return to office was climbing back and looks like it's stalled out a little bit. And I guess landlords are just looking for ways to find ways to bring tenants back in and engage them. I guess air quality is a big part. What other things are you think that the landlords are really throwing out that are important?
A lot of landlords, and we work with more landlords than we ever have. Pre-pandemic, we were 95% tenant/occupier.
Yep.
We're now very much 50-50. So, and landlords, all the ones we're working with, I would say, are the proactive ones, and they're all pushing us really hard, and they want ideas and they want to know what they should be doing, which is really good for us and for their tenants. It's a bit of a fight now, right? You have to be a proactive landlord. You want to charge a premium lease. You want to attract tenants. So you need to do something in your building. So a lot of the landlords, and we're doing different things. So a couple of our US landlords, post lockdown, wanted to make sure that they were not overfilling, the rooftop terraces, the gyms and other things. So we put footfall or people count sensors in for them. And just by doing that, people were quite comfortable going into a space because they knew how many people were in there. Then indoor air quality is the obvious next one. And we have kiosk mode, which shows you live indoor air quality, which, we built in conjunction with one of our customers, GSK. But doing 2 of those things can quite quickly put customers and users of your buildings at ease, because a lot of people are still really worried, right? And some aren't. I don't really care myself, but a lot of people are really worried still, right? And so giving them some reassurance that the gym's not over-occupied, the rooftop terrace is not over-occupied, the indoor air quality is good, and then having some historic data for people to know when they should go and should not go to the gym and other areas is quite a big thing. The other thing we're seeing is energy prices have obviously gone through the roof. So wanting to understand energy usage and if they can optimize their building management systems and HVAC systems to make it smarter really and do a little bit more with data rather than it just being locked in the basement with the facilities team and they action something when it's broken or there's a proper alert.
Yeah, when the alarm goes off.
Yeah, doing some smart stuff with it. So we're doing a lot around occupancy and capacity, indoor air quality, and BMS optimization, and bringing that data into the platform. So,
has anyone done any studies yet on? Like I've heard bits and pieces, but any studies on the workers' ability to be productive or focus if the air quality is better?
There are some stats. I'm just going to look it up on my laptop because I got asked this the other week, and I asked Francesca, our in-house environmental scientist, who's a bit of a smart person on this subject. And there are some studies about temperature and what happens to productivity. So there's a study that studies indicate that an average 2% decrement in work performance per degrees Celsius temperature rise above 25 degrees Celsius. So that's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory did that. And then, so if you're looking at the highest productivity is between around 22 degrees for summer and winter. For example, if you're hitting 30 degrees, which one of our telecoms customers was in their office last summer, they were hitting between 30 and 32. Performance is only 91.1% of the maximum performance. So a reduction in 8.9%. And that's just based on temperature.
Surprised it's that high. Like it gets that high. I just want to go have a nice little nap somewhere.
Yeah, exactly right. And, well, if you mix 0%. That with high, we mix high temperature with high CO2 and everyone's drowsy in the afternoon, right? So there are more and more studies happening because, CO2 is one thing, but if you get high temperature and high CO2, productivity just goes through the floor, really. So Harvard and Syracuse continue to update their research. Theirs is all based on the effects of CO2. They did some laboratory work, then they did a small real-life scenario, then they've done a larger real-life scenario in lots of offices with lots of people. I think it was up to 100 offices, and they're doing bigger ones. So there's more and more work and studies being done around that, but it does affect people, right? I mean, whether people think so or not, the old school probably say, just get on with it, but actually
open the window.
Yeah, open the window, let some fresh air in. If your BMS can't do anything about it, then But there are more and more studies, and there's more and more data proving that indoor air quality does affect performance of people.
Yeah, totally. You're obviously you're obviously a British company originally. You're selling around it. Do you feel like there's a territory that's leading in this space? Or do you feel like a lot of it, I've seemed to have picked up, I believe that I'm seeing a lot of the trends around ESG and things seem to be being pushed out of the UK more than anywhere. They seem to be a bit further ahead. Are you seeing trends in a specific region, or is it just everywhere you're across now is starting to get into this?
No, not really. So APAC, not really picking up on indoor air quality or ESG. If you're a big company, you might do for your staff and your team, but in general, we're not seeing a lot in the APAC region.
Yep.
In UK, ESG, SECR, streamlined energy carbon reporting, getting bigger and bigger. All over Europe, public places need to monitor and show CO2 measurements. Belgium just brought it in, and Amsterdam and the Netherlands have had it for a while. Germany's got it as well. Big targets around ESG for the UK, but the one that's coming up very rapidly is the US, right? So and that's around energy and ESG. When Salesforce announced, I think it was last month or the month before, that their execs will now be paid targeted on ESG, not just sales, that then there's a shift change coming, right? So, and in the US, you've got local law 97 in New York. Another state just announced something similar. So I think the US will start to accelerate ahead of people, but UK
I think
and Europe,
Massachusetts might have done something there as well. I think they're pretty up there.
Yeah. And so UK and Europe at the moment are the main ones, but the US is coming up fast, and we're growing rapidly in the US around energy optimization, around indoor air quality. Everything we do, we're growing rapidly in the US, but we're being asked a lot about reporting now on ESG and local law 97, and more will come around the US. So we're building those into the new platform. So you'll have pre-canned reports, and we will not have everyone's perfect ESG report, but we'll have something you can use as part of your general reporting. So, but we'll have a local law 97 specific one as well.
Great. So you're starting in the US, obviously massive market. You're starting in New York, where the legislation is. I guess where the big some of the bigger property companies are based, right? Some of the more enterprise companies are headquartered there. Is that where you've started off, or?
Yeah, so we just won a very large customer in the US with lots and lots of buildings, and they happen to be headquartered in the US. So that's where we are starting. Our two guys, one's in Washington, one's in Jersey. So New York's the easy one, right? There's 25,000 buildings that need to report on local law 97, but there's a huge amount of buildings in New York anyway, right? That are targets for us and customers. And a lot of the landlords we're talking to, we're talking to some, we're already working with, Arlington, who got acquired by Brookfield very recently. We already work with 4 partnership, Basil and his team. Basil and his team are probably the most proactive landlords and people that we've worked with in this space. They've been working with us for a couple of years, and they let every tenant know, and we're in their buildings by default for every new building that they build. So they're, and they sell space fast because they're showing everyone we've got a smart building, and we want to prove to you that you're coming to a healthy, safe environment. The US landlords we're working with obviously have much bigger, building numbers, but they're also saying we want to do it now. We're not going to be laggards. But you said, like you said earlier, landlords could be laggards before, but they don't really have a choice anymore. And the ones that don't start to be proactive about it, I think they'll time will tell when people start to leave after their leases come up.
Well, 100%. We see tenants looking happy to pay a premium for that space, or is it more that they just simply won't go to a space if it's if it doesn't hit a certain requirements that's set out in their company constitution, or
I think it'll be a mix. I think some have already said. I was reading in a BizNow article a while ago. I think it was maybe last month or the month before, that people are talking about paying a small premium to know that the building's a smart building, and indoor air quality and occupancy or footfalls being monitored. But also a lot of landlords are putting it in, and they'll just build it into the service charge. The cost per square foot of the software is pittance, right? For a landlord, really. So it's not a lot of money, and they put the service charge up, or the price per square foot up, then it's not going to move the dial on a lease. So there's many ways to skin a cat, so they say. So I think different landlords and different people will do it in different ways.
Okay, brilliant, awesome. And could you? I know you've got some interesting stories from what you've learned and customers you've worked with. I think the Met Office is one we've spoken about previously. Are you happy to share your stories around that?
Yeah, so they're a great customer. Ralph James is their head of facilities and operations, who's a very good man. And we started off just with 6 indoor air quality sensors with those guys. He actually won a raffle at an event that we were hosting, and took the sensors away, placed them strategically in his office. They were people getting complaints about hot and cold spots, and sure enough, what the BMS was saying and what the sensors were saying were 2 different things. And he was like, all right, I need more of these. So he went from 6 to 60 sensors. They're all over the office. And it helped him do a couple of things. Number one, the hot and cold spot complaints, what they eventually found was a crack in the insulation within the building that was, letting cold air in, that they hadn't found for years. But being able to move the sensors around, and BMS sensors are fixed on the wall, so you can't do a lot with them. But when you're using wireless sensors that you can move around, you can put them in places and you can start to target areas. So they found that it helped them with finding a big, crack in the insulation, which they fixed, and then no more cold spots in the area. So there was an energy saving there. And then also the other one with the building management system, temperature and humidity sensors, they unfortunately hadn't been calibrated as well as they should. So they were out by a couple of degrees in some areas. So Ralph had that fixed, and immediately they saw energy savings. And then, he came back to us and said, right, let's have a look at some other things that cost us money that we'd like to try and reduce the cost of maintenance and reduce our carbon emissions as a business. So the next project he threw at us was radar stations. So we sat around a table with Ralph. He said, this is what we need to get out of the radar stations every week and every month. It's done manually. We send someone in a car, they drive there, they get the information, they bring it back, they write it down. And so it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it was human error. These guys are doing lots of this, plus all their other things they need to do. They might make an error. So they needed energy readings, they needed temperature and humidity readings in the station itself, it's essentially a big server room. And then they also needed to look at the dome as well. So this was costing them £12,500 a year. Lots of people driving, lots of maintenance on the car, wear and tear on the car, and the person having to drive an hour or two each way every once a week or every other week, depends on what it was. That's £12,500 a year. So we went away, worked with a hardware partner of ours, and said, what's the best solution? Because radar stations aren't in cities, right? They're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So we needed battery powered sensors that were going to last a few years. We needed, so we chose a LoRa partner of ours, put the solution together, tested the sensors in a radar station with them, and we put a solution together for the software, and the hardware was £9,500 over 3 years. So the cost reduction was big. And then straight away, after a couple of months, they were able to see, and actually the first part was after a month, they could see that the temperature of the on one side of the heating, where the heating was and then the cooling was, they were permanently fighting each other. So they were always on, they were never off. So putting 4 temperature sensors in at the cardinal points, temperature and humidity sensors, they were able to make setting changes on both of those units, because they're not building management systems. These are the size of a large shipping container. Most of these places are, right? So they don't need HVAC systems. They've just got a cassette unit does heating and cooling. Some of them are combined, some of them are separate. So quite quickly they were able to see one was fighting the other, and they made that change. They had an energy reduction of about 15%, I think, based on that.
So they're just like one hot, one cold, going at each other to equal out.
Yeah. Well, one was trying to heat it up, the other one was trying to cool it down. So that so it was quite interesting. It's quite funny, because Ralph's like, wow, I didn't know that was happening. But no one would, because the guys and girls who went there just went to check the temperature. And if they went to check the temperature with a handheld and they were standing in the middle of the room, it would generally be there
fine,
or there.
Doesn't matter how it got there. They're just like, yeah, this is fine.
It's
on
fine.
To the next
and
one.
Then they'd write the energy meter down. Then they'd go in the dome and look at the dome and things like that. But the other thing we found, that in the dome in the winter, they've got a dehumidifier in there. And the scientists said, we need one in there. And Ralph said, I'm not sure you do, because I imagine it's quite humid in there. Like, no, the dehumidifier is doing its job. And we were able to help Ralph prove that actually during the middle of winter, it was 90% humidity in the dome, but the dome, the data and the information coming out was really accurate. So Ralph and the whole of the Met Office have got a lot of data now that they never had before, which is helping everyone in the team, not just Ralph, but it's helping the scientists. They've reduced their energy, usage, which is reducing the cost, and they've not nowhere near as many trips to the radar station in the car, which is reducing, carbon monoxide from the cars, wear and tear on the cars, and the engineers then only go there when they need to these days. So they're a great customer. They have so many great case studies for the things that they do, and it hasn't cost them a fortune, but the savings are substantial.
Well, you think about the environmental impact of that. If you just sort of extrapolate that one example of they're basically heating and cooling at the same time in this one place, and this one. Just imagine, like, if you take the city of London or the UK or the how often that inefficiency is happening, and what the savings, like energy savings, could be for the planet if people were just more aware of it. I mean, I look in my office and I feel bad if I've left the heat pump on overnight, but imagine if they're like that on a global scale, just the amount of wastage that would be happening would be kind of mind blowing. It
would. And I think more and more people need to look at this. the energy savings we need to make. Matt Marson did a talk at IoT World Congress on Tuesday. And where we are now with kilowatts usage to where we need to be, we need to halve that, right? So, and that's a big ask. So, I'm Australian, but I live in England. Tesco have got a saying, every little helps, right? That's their strap line. We all need to start, and people need to start, because we can reduce it. But, you do small items like the stuff that Ralph did to help his whole company make some big changes, right? And it's just, we've got another customer. We did their building in Spain. They've moved into quite a new building. We haven't been able to connect to the BMS yet because the landlord's in control of it. So we just got to go through some hurdles and tick some boxes. But we put footfall people counting sensors in, and we put indoor air quality sensors in. And we're nosy with data. We love data, and a lot of our team love data. So after a couple of weeks of this being in, we noticed that in the morning, the temperature was going up, but there was nobody in. And then in the evening, the temperature was staying up, but nobody was in. So we went and spoke to the customer and said, look, this is what we're seeing. Maybe talk to your landlord and ask him to turn your HVAC on an hour or two later and turn it off an hour or two earlier, because people are coming in at 8:39 and they've gone by 6, right? It's in Spain. So they don't generally tend to work long hours, but
they go to sleep halfway through as well.
But they have siesta, which I quite like.
I love that.
So they
promote that everywhere in the world if it was possible.
I think everyone should do it. I do it on the weekends. My children and my wife call it a nana nap. So
do I.
so they went and spoke to the landlord. Landlord's now turning it on an hour later and turning it off an hour earlier. And they've worked out, just in this one building, in this one space, they're only on 3 floors. I think they're saving 50,000 euros on their energy bill. Oh. So they will. So they've only just done it. It's not going to happen overnight, but over the next 12 months, they've already worked out they'll save £50,000 on their energy bill.
Yeah, so it's not just the impact on it's the economic impact as well as the environmental, right? It's massive.
Correct.
There's not small changes. I mean, a small change, just have a small tweak, but a big impact is that's huge. You touched on occupancy.
Imagine if the landlord then said, "Look, I've just done this for one of my tenants in this building. Why don't I do it for all of you?" Whether he's done that or not, I don't know yet. We should ask him. But if they did that across the board, all of his tenants could save money. I don't know how many of them have 3 floors or 1 floor or half a floor or whatever it is, but there's cost savings to be made there straight away.
I mean, you'd like to think that they would. It's a pretty easy list. You'd like to think that they would take that and roll it forward, but who knows? Depends on the landlord, I think. You mentioned as well occupancy data. I know that's a big part of what you do. I imagine that's been really interesting. Is people have been trying to track who's in the office, who's not. How's that changed, and how do you see it? And is there any? It's just a few articles I read where there's some of the staff thinking, am I being tracked? And have you ever get across those sort of hurdles? I'm sure you get approached by that. How do you attack that? And what's the new sort of world like where you're looking and tracking occupancy? And if you could share a bit around that, I think it'd be super interesting.
Yeah, so it depends on how granular you start to track. So landlords generally do people count in and out of the common areas and of the floors. They don't really go into the desk and meeting room monitoring. That's more tenant/occupier. But people always ask, and a lot of people, rightfully so, don't want to be tracked. So all of the hardware that we use is GDPR compliant. We've got one pages that the marketing team have put together for customers to say, and it's for the customers to communicate before it goes in. It's not after it goes in, but we've got 1 pages or 2 pages to explain what's about to happen, what the sensors are and what they're doing. And they don't know it's Michael or Tom sitting at a desk. They just know there's a human at a desk or in a meeting room. So we've never had any issues. One of our customers prior to COVID, we generally use overhead sensors because people want the high accuracy. If you use PIRs, they're not as accurate. But we had one customer.
What's PIR stand for, sorry?
The passive infrared. So it's the one you would stick under a desk, and if you put your legs under it, it says it marks it's occupied, and then when you move away, it's vacant. But
I was trying to guess the acronym, but I wouldn't have got that one.
No, that's all right. And it depends. It depends on how you sit at the desk. I sit on a ball, so the PIR doesn't read me, and some of the young ladies who work for us sit with their legs crossed or on the side, so that doesn't read it. But one of our customers they put PIRs at every desk, and about a month later, human resources came in one weekend or one day, and there were all of these PIRs stacked on their desk saying, "You're not tracking me. This is Big Brother." Because 4 or 5, I think it must have been about 4 years ago now. PIRs were a little bit bigger than they were now, and they're quite intrusive, and they're right under the desk. So if you hit your knees on them, people are like, "What's this?" It's tracking that I'm sitting here, and they were all ripped off. And when we said, "Look, we use overhead sensors. They look like a smoke alarm," we went and spoke to the customer. They said, "Let's give it a try." We then went and spoke to the unions with them. We proved to them that it doesn't know it's Tom or Michael sitting at a desk or in a meeting room. They went and spoke to people, and they were a lot more comfortable having something above their head than they were under their desk.
Yeah,
so,
makes sense. Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting. And cool. And what about any sort of wider trends from here in commercial real estate? What are you saying? I think I don't think it's. I feel like we can start to call an end of a pandemic. I'm not. I'm always a bit wary about what could come around the corner, but it feels like we're on the other side of the worst of it anyway. So, where do you think, if you're willing to sort of gaze into a crystal ball, what do you think is coming up, and other trends that you think will have an impact on commercial real estate?
More and more people are asking us about water monitoring. So, understanding water monitoring in buildings. There's Legionella monitoring is big in the UK, but it's not big in other parts of the world. But monitoring water usage, we're being asked about that more and more. And that's not a COVID thing. That's just ESG, sustainable development goals. It's number 3, health and well-being, and I can't remember which number it is around utilization of resources and helping reduce your carbon footprint. Can't remember what number is that. Number 12, I think, possibly. But lots more people asking us about water monitoring. Energy monitoring is getting bigger and bigger, but water monitoring as well. I think the other thing that will come more and more is, how do you give more of the data that you've got in your building to your users of your building? So we're doing more integrations. We've been an integrated partner with Equiem for many years, but we're doing that with HQO and others now. And I think more of that data getting into the hands of the users, whether it's the indoor air quality, whether it's the busyness of the building, people want to know energy usage. Is the building I'm working in, are they doing something about energy usage? So some of that data will, I think, getting into the hands of the users to show that building owners are doing more about it. I think that's. Will anyone use that tenant facing? Do tenants use that to say, like, if they look at it and say, "Am I going to come to the office today? I can see it's busy," or like, is it go to that level at the moment? Like, I can see the office is too busy today. I'm not going to go in, or has it got to that point? I think most people have headed off before they realise how busy it is in the morning, right? So unless you're doing a half day, then you can go in and say, "It's too busy anyway, I'm not going in." But I think most people are going in. But it's pretty simple, right? At the moment, I think as well, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the days of the week that people are coming in. And if you're going to go in on a Monday and a Friday, you will have a quiet building. That's pretty obvious. But I think looking at the trends and patterns, if businesses want to try and flatten the peaks or the spikes, then using that data will help. Just showing you, and it will be very, very obvious. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday down here. So, but users will use it, but I think it's an obvious one at the moment that people are only coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. How it will help over time, I think it's just people flattening out the peaks and companies saying, can more people come in on a Monday and a Friday, which I don't know how that will work, right? You can't really enforce these things. And, we've had flexible working since before the pandemic. So it's neither here nor there for us. But I think also being able to, so for us as a business, it's not always about using our platform, the front end. So what's happening more and more, and we're being asked by landlords and bigger partners, is to give them the data in different ways. So I think one of the things that's happening, and I know some people don't believe what we're doing is the right thing, and everyone has their own opinion, but we believe that giving access to our data, and we've already got an open API, but we're publishing the new API, and you can take it and put it into another platform. We've got a large landlord in Canada that just uses our API. They don't use our platform. I think from a provider's point of view, flexibility of your platform to allow your customers to do what they want with your data is hugely important. And I think that's only going to happen more and more and more.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, people are really starting to, like, we're seeing it in our business, right? When people are buying the software, they want to know, how can I access this data? How can I, we've got our own BI instances. We want to access it. We want to run it through with all our other business data as well. So yeah, absolutely, I totally agree. Massive growing trend there.
And there's not a lot more from a building is a building to us, right? Whether it's a commercial space, whether it's a warehouse, it's industrial, it's a hospital, healthcare, we do things across lots of buildings, and we do different things with different people in those buildings. But I think one of the things I think will happen more and more is getting into the BMS a bit more and putting additional sensors in so you can do proactive maintenance, rather than just planned preventative maintenance, taking the data from fan coil units. And if it's a really old one that's not giving you its fan speed or vibration, putting vibration sensors on, putting additional temperature sensors on those units, putting temperature sensors on motors, leak detection. I think more and more sensors will go in to give more and more data out if it's going to help reduce the operating costs, increase performance, and help you reduce your energy and your carbon footprint. I think more use cases will come out, but you're just trying to figure out what they are as a customer by customer use case. It's not, you can't say one size fits all in this, but we've got a customer who is doing a hell of a lot of leak detection because they've had leaks before. They put leak detection sensors everywhere because that was a problem. They're not doing indoor air quality to start with. Leak detection is a problem because it's a very old building. So I think it'll always be a case by case.
But for those sensors, the wireless sensors themselves, I don't know the actual hardware. How long does like a battery last on those? Are they battery powered, I assume, if they're wireless?
Yeah, they are. So it depends on the sensors. Some of our partners, their batteries last 4 years. If you've got the smaller, coin-sized batteries, they'll last 12 to 18 months, but you don't really want that. So some of them offer the bigger sensor body with, AA batteries in or C-size batteries. They'll last 3 or 4 years. Now, if you don't have to change them for 3 or 4 years, that's quite a good thing, right? And you can put these. You've got small sensors, you've got large sensors, you've got sensors pretty much for everything. The hardware world is still developing. Although this is a very immature space, there's more and more hardware sensors coming out into the market all the time.
And it's not something you obviously, as one thing I was wondering, it's not something you've got into, you partner for the hardware stuff rather than developing the hardware yourself. You're strictly on the software side.
Yeah, no, we're not. We're a pure software company. We're not going to get into hardware.
Hardware is hard, I think, is the old saying. It looks hard.
Hardware is hard, but also there are so many companies making hardware now. There's new ones coming out all the time. There's new sensors. I like to think I keep my ear to the ground, but people tell me about a company I've never heard of every other week, and I'm like, shit, I thought I knew. I need
a sensor for that. You need a sensor to know when they're...
Exactly right. There's more and more coming out. There's plenty to choose from. Some that have come out are not the best, and we generally test them and then send them back. But there's some really good kit coming out, and I think more and more people want wireless because they want things that are easy to deploy. And with battery life these days be getting better and better, and compute power being more and more economic on the sensors themselves, so they use less battery power. I think big companies are making new sensors. Big companies that were only ever making wired sensors are now making wireless sensors. But it's a massive market. We would never get into that. It's just I think it's easier doing software, and hardware is hard, as you said. So
yeah, and software is hard too. To be fair, it's like you've always got. There's always at least for us, there's always enough on your plate. There's always plenty to do in software, let alone trying to figure out hardware at the same time. So I would say it's a smart move. Unless you're Apple, I think it's probably. For me, it's probably the right way to go. Hey, Michael, thank you so much. It's been super interesting, and congratulations on your growth. Obviously, exciting growth in the last few years, and excited to hear that you're expanding out into the US as well. So, best of luck for that. Thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Cool. Cheers, mate. Lovely to speak to you. I'll see you when you move to the UK for 6 months.
Yeah, see you in London. See you at the end of this month for summer.
End of the month. Well, we'll have a beer. The weather's good. Long summer days, although it's not really summer. It was 9 degrees this morning when I was kayaking. So it's still not that warm yet.
Well, I congratulate you for kayaking in 9-degree weather, but 100% I'll look forward to having a beer at a London pub. It'll be the first thing I want to do when I get off.
Cool. Cheers, buddy. Good to speak to you.
Thanks, Michael.